Well, this week, students at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School return for their first full day of classes. And as they continue the delicate process of healing and getting back to some kind of normalcy following the deadly shooting 3 weeks ago, state lawmakers approved a sweeping school safety bill. It includes some new gun control measures, money for more mental health services, and funding for increased school safety measures. The most controversial being language that would give some school employees the option to take part in what is called the Marshall Program, where they would be allowed to carry a firearm on campus. Joining me now to share his views on this pending legislation and how the district is trying to move forward is Broward School Superintendent Robert Runcie. Mr. Runcie, thank you so much for being with us today.
Pam, thank you for having me on your show.
Before we get started, I just want to let you know that our thoughts and prayers continue to be with you, with the district, with the people of Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. This has been a difficult road. It's been horrific for all of us in South Florida to watch all of this unfold. How is everybody doing?
You know, we're trying to certainly recover to the best that we can, but you know, our community is at the center of horrific loss and heartbreak. You know, our focus is on supporting our students, our families, the Marjory Stoneman Douglas community, and in some respects, the entire district has been impacted. You know, employees, students, you know, our educators. So we're working to make sure that we can support to the greatest extent that we can. You know, this entire district, so we can find a path forward. It's going to be difficult. It's going to take a long period of time, but it's a journey that unfortunately we have to take on and figure out how do we get to a better world on the other end.
For that first full day back, you had two visitors and two very different experiences. Let's start with the more positive one, which was Miami Heat star Dwayne Wade was on campus. You were there for that. Tell us how important that was for the students to have him there.
D. Wade's surprise visit on the campus of Marjory Stoneman Douglas was electrifying. It was inspiring, to say the least. Most of all, I really have to tell you that D. Wade is extremely personable. He spent at least a couple hours there. He interacted with students. You know, he took pictures. We had sessions where he had conversations, a lot of dialogue. There was one period where he sat down with a group of students. I mean, he was very focused. He was taking notes. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience. Not just a thing for, you know, photo ops or media. I mean, he came there sincerely to connect with the students, to you know, share some of his experience coming from Chicago, a city that also sees continued violence and death with our youth, and how does that connect to what's happened here in Parkland. So it was a wonderful day on many levels.
A city, talking about Chicago, where you were the superintendent and saw a lot of that violence on a regular basis, did you?
Yeah, I was actually administrator there. I worked in Chicago under the leadership of Arnie Duncan, who later became our Secretary of Education. And Chicago is, you know, still has a tremendous amount of violence, especially in many of the high crime, high poverty areas of the city. So there are lots of youth would see their lives cut short each and every year. And I think a big part of it is the lack of economic opportunity and jobs. It limits opportunities for kids, and they revert to things like gangs and street activity that don't end well.
And D. Wade connected with what happened at Marjory Stoneman Douglas because one of the victims, Joaquin Oliver, was a big fan of his. Was buried in a D. Wade jersey, and D. Wade dedicated the rest of the season to him. So I know he's been very connected to this story because of that.
No, he spoke very emotionally about that, to see that his life and what he's done could have that kind of impact on a student and their family, that they would you know, bury their child with his jersey. was really impactful to him. And so it was, again, great to see him at the school.
In contrast, the other visitor was Education Secretary Betty DeVos, who did not sit down and speak with the students. They were very critical of her visit on Twitter. Talk about her visit there to the school.
You know, it was a day in contrast. It really was. She came in. I think it was much more low key. Not a lot of interaction with students. She didn't address students in any formal way, and left the campus and did a press conference at a remote location. The students, some students from the journalism program there, as well as others, asked her questions, but they didn't feel like they were getting the answers. It was nowhere near as engaging and connected as it was with D. Wade. So it was
very different.
Yeah, very different.
Let's talk about the recent legislation that was passed. Is it enough for now, or do you think more needs to be done? And one of the things that the Trump administration is calling for is arming teachers. You've been very vocal and against that. Speak to that.
Well, I can tell you, I'm adamantly opposed to arming teachers. Our teachers in Broward, and I would say throughout this country, have enough on their plate in order to provide the educational services that we demand of them. Teachers are, I think, significantly underpaid in terms of the value they provide. So my view is, instead of trying to arm teachers with guns, we need to be arming them with more compensation in their pockets. We need to provide better benefits for them. We need to have more respect for this profession. If we want to make our campuses safer, we need to invest in more law enforcement personnel on campus, not armed teachers. There's so much that can go wrong with that. I mean, you can think of scenarios where there's an incident at a school, law enforcement shows up, and how do they determine who is the actual shooter that they need to deal with? You have more guns on campus now, so that creates more and more opportunities for something to go wrong. There's really no upside to doing this other than selling more guns in the United States. And to see that this incident was the result of guns, why would the solution be to add more guns into the environment? So I don't believe that is a good solution for us at all.
The governor has sided with you. He's been against arming teachers as well. Just for clarity, this is being recorded on a Thursday. That legislation is sitting on his desk. He could choose to veto it altogether. Yeah. He could strike part of that out. He could sign this. What would you like to see him do?
I would encourage the governor to veto what was formerly called the Marshall Plan. It's now called the Aaron Feist protection piece of the bill,
right.
But it essentially allows school districts to arm non-classroom personnel. I would veto that, take the $67 million allocated to that, and put that back into the per student funding, which, by the way, based on what we've seen, the base student allocation will only go up by 47 cents. 47 cents. That isn't going to leave us any dollars to really improve teacher salaries and address some of the other issues that we have in our district. So I would encourage the governor to do that. And to the governor's credit, throughout this whole entire incident, he's been very connected. I spoke to him. He called daily. He attended many of the funerals. He spent a lot of time in Broward County. He listened to students, he listened to parents, and he put forth a proposal that was reflective of his time here and being proximate to the situation. I think he was sensitized to it, and so I give him much credit for that. Unfortunately, that did not translate into what we saw coming out of the legislature. So we have a bill. It's not perfect, but it is a start, and we need to continue to move forward to get more legislation, more common sense gun control. There should have been something on the table to ban assault rifles. That hasn't occurred.
Which is what the students wanted. That's what they went up there and lobbied for.
That's what the students want. There's been surveys done of across the state of Florida. A recent poll shows that the majority of people in this state, they are for improving background checks. They are for having controls and limits on assault rifles, which have no purpose but to serve as machines of war and kill people. So we have to get to that point. The future of our society, the future of our children depend on it.
Let's talk about this legislation. There are several pieces. One, obviously, is the gun control piece, raising the age from 18 to 21 in order to buy a firearm, expanding the 3-day waiting period for all firearms, banning bump stocks. The other piece is a $400 million package for mental health. And then the other portion is also for school safety and, again, the Marshall program. The parents, again, of Parkland and 2 of the fathers did go up and they wanted this bill as it is to be passed. So do you think that, even though you're saying it's not enough, do you think that it's good for now? It's a starting point.
Yeah, and I think if you were to sit down and talk to these parents at any length, they would share a similar perspective. It's a starting point. Yes, it includes all the items that you mentioned. It includes funding for more school resource officers. It includes the request for funding to build a new building on the Marjory Stoneman Douglas campus, to demolish the building 12 where this horrific tragedy occurred, and to erect a memorial that the victims and their families will come together and determine what's most appropriate. Yes, so there's some good pieces in it. Unfortunately, when these things come around, there's always some pieces in it that are somewhat problematic. But I think, in future legislative sessions, we need to find a way to address the shortcomings that exist in the bill.
There have also been legislators who are not comfortable with any personnel, whether it's, we've talked about teachers who are, if they're just classroom teachers, they're not going to be the ones who are going to be armed. We could see football coaches, they even maintenance people, other people, administrators. But there are those who say minority students would be at risk, that it's not a good idea for any guns to be on campus because it could present a higher risk to minority students. What is your thought on that?
I certainly think there's some merit to that. There's also a concern that when you have minority educators or personnel, they could be, incorrectly profiled. When law enforcement, again, shows up on a campus and they're facing several individuals with guns, what action are they to take? Again, it's just a really bad idea. Invest in school resource officers. We can invest in additional measures to harden schools as well, but the answer is not to introduce more and more guns. We just saw an incident that occurred in Georgia about a week or so ago where a teacher kind of lost it in the classroom and started firing off a gun. I know of incidents where students have overpowered teachers. We've had them, arrested for that type of behavior. But I can't imagine an incident involving a student that's able to overpower a teacher and there's a gun involved in that altercation. That could be disastrous. And I'm not about to allow any personnel other than law enforcement in this county to bring a firearm onto a campus.
Let's talk about the independent review of how the school district handled Nicholas Cruz's case. You have called for that. You want there to be an investigation into what happened with his mental health. He was deemed a behavioral problem. He was expelled from Marjory Stoneman Douglas. He did go to an alternative school. We know at some point he did go back. There are people who are blaming the district for not doing enough for him.
Well, one of the things I try not to do is to speculate, make assumptions without having all the facts. I think it's incumbent on this district to have an independent, comprehensive, thorough review that's done in a very transparent and urgent way so that we can identify what happened to this student academically, what happened in terms of mental health services, social emotional services, what what were staff doing and his whole journey through the system. So one, we can learn where there were opportunities for us to improve what we're doing, take those lessons and make changes in the district so that we can minimize and prevent anything like this from happening again with our students. Now, I can tell you, if we provided services perfectly to any student, the fact that he was still able to go out and purchase a deadly firearm, there's still a hole in the system. So it's not just about what the school district can do. We need to also look at what does law enforcement need to do? What does the juvenile justice system need to do? Mental health services, all of these different entities need to be working together in a more collaborative fashion. That was a conversation I had with the governor and lawmakers, and within 7026, this bill had passed. There are provisions in there that encourage that kind of collaboration, that type of sharing of information, and then the ability to take action. So if we have someone that has behavior disabilities, mental health issues, we should be able to engage law enforcement, and they should be able to confiscate any firearms that they have, and the only way they can get them back is they would have to go through a court process and petition
and
to have them back.
And that's part of the bill, too, to expand that authority by law enforcement.
Yeah, because today you can have someone, regardless of their behavior and what they do, you can Baker Act someone, and within 72 hours, you have to return their firearms. So again, there are holes in the entire system.
Let's talk about law enforcement for a minute, because as the investigation continues, there's been a magnifying glass now on what the Broward Sheriff's Office did or did not do. There were allegedly 23 calls to the Cruz home. 2 deputies are now being looked at to see what they did or didn't do in those calls in that case. The SRO officer, Scott Peterson, didn't go in. He was outside for 4 minutes. Now there's discussion of whether a perimeter was called around the school. Sheriff Scott Israel has been out front and center with you since the very beginning of all of this. There are now calls perhaps for him by some to step down. Do you think that the sheriff should step down?
At this point, I think it would be way premature to come to that type of conclusion. First thing I will tell you is that my observation on the day of this tragic shooting, law enforcement, first responders, they were there in full force, and they were, exhibiting tremendous courage, putting their lives on the line, running in and out of the building, making sure students were getting out of there. So I don't want us to paint a broad brush around law enforcement, our first responders. I mean, I think they are outstanding. There may be some that didn't do what they were supposed to do. I can't make that assessment at this point. What I will say is that there's a investigation that has been ordered by the state. I think the governor initiated that through his office. We need to let that investigation proceed. That needs to be done thoroughly. And then we should all be able to see the outcome of that, and then we could draw our conclusion and assessments based on the facts that we have in front of us. So at this point, it'd be hard for me to do that. Again, my experience with the sheriff's office, and especially relative to this incident, and what I saw from other municipalities and first responders, I thought they were outstanding.
Before we go, how proud are you of the young people at Marjory Stoneman Douglas?
Out of this horrific tragedy and seeing the worst of humanity, I'm also seeing the best. The kindness that has been exhibited from people all over this county, this state, the country, and the world for that matter, has been extraordinary. But most of all, to see our young people, our students, able to take this tragedy and figure out a way that they can create a purpose, a calling to bring about much needed change in this country, to do what the adults in our generation have not been able to do. It truly has been inspiring. It's something I continue to support. They represent what the value of public education is all about. And what I also see them doing is connecting with kids from all over the country. So, for example, one of the things that we talked about the other day when D. Wade was here was how they're connecting themselves to the students in Chicago. In fact, a group of students from Chicago came down here and met the previous weekend with Parkland students, and they're sharing ideas. And the Parkland students will tell you, hey, we're on the same page. Yeah. We have the same interests. So I'm hoping out of this, we will actually see a more closer country as our young people develop, share a common experience, share a common agenda, and change the world. So I'm really excited about that aspect of it. And look, we wouldn't be here talking today about 7026. Several weeks ago, the legislature would not even entertain a conversation about school safety and gun laws. But here we are. Yeah. It's actually happened, and it's a result of the students stepping up. And I would also say that the families in Parkland have been there too. They've made the trips up to Tallahassee. They've been in the face of legislature. So what we see, this legislation, which has some really good pieces in it, that's not going to just benefit Broward, but Miami-Dade, Palm Beach, the entire state of Florida, that's a credit to the students in Parkland. It's a credit to the parents in that community for their strength. And so when they say Parkland strong and MSD strong, they mean it, they're doing it, they're showing it.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Runcie. We really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
And be sure to join me as I moderate a South Florida PBS special town hall, Parkland the Way Forward, airing Thursday, March 22nd at 8 p.m. Superintendent Robert Runcie will be there, joined by a panel of experts to answer your questions and to discuss possible solutions addressing mental health, gun control, and school safety. You can also take part and ask questions during the studio taping of the show by joining us on Facebook Live starting Wednesday, March 21st at 8 p.m. In the meantime, we are collecting questions, so go ahead and send them to our email address, yoursouthflorida@southfloridapbs.org, or send us a message on Facebook or Twitter @YourSouthFL. We look forward to hearing from you.